In 1972, someone claimed an offer was placed on the table that wasn't written on paper. It was measured in weight. 100 kilograms of gold. Not cash. Not a check. Gold heavy enough to bruise a wooden surface if you dropped a bar wrong. And the request attached to it was simple, almost childish in its confidence. Train my son. Not for a week. Not for a demonstration. Exclusively. Privately. Away from cameras, away from contracts, away from the world. That offer should not exist in the same universe as Bruce Lee. Because Bruce Lee wasn't a man you purchased. He was a man you collided with. And on the day that gold offer turned into a challenge, the room reportedly learned the difference. This is that story. By 1972, Bruce Lee had already become a problem for the old order. Not just in film. In identity. He was a Chinese man in a Western market refusing to play the obedient role. He was an athlete who treated fighting like science. He was a teacher who didn't care if tradition approved of his methods. And most dangerous of all, he was building something bigger than a dojo. He was building a philosophy that made rich men feel poor. Because money can buy security. It can buy silence. It can buy walls. But it can't buy timing. It can't buy discipline. It can't buy the ability to stay calm when another man's ego is walking toward you like a weapon. Later accounts suggest that somewhere in that year, an invitation reached Bruce through an unusual chain. Not a public letter. Not a studio memo. A quiet approach. A private request with too much confidence in it. A prince, or someone close enough to power that the difference didn't matter, wanted Bruce Lee inside a controlled space. The kind of space where people speak softly because the air itself belongs to someone. The kind of space where no isn't a normal answer. And that's what makes the setup feel real, even when the details blur. Because powerful people don't always threaten you. Sometimes they offer you comfort. Sometimes they offer you wealth. Sometimes they offer you a deal that's supposed to make you grateful. And gratitude is the first leash. According to those present in the versions that survive, the pitch came dressed as admiration. A prince had heard about Bruce. Not just the films. The stories. The speed. The discipline. The way he could embarrass stronger men without looking angry. The prince wanted that for his son. But not as a hobby. As an acquisition. Like buying the best racehorse, the best falcon, the best surgeon. In that world, the best doesn't belong to the public. The best belongs to the house. So the offer was made. Gold. A weight so heavy it sounds theatrical. Yet the point of the number isn't math. The point is domination. 100 kilograms is not an amount you casually mention. It's a statement that says, I can make your life unreal if you cooperate. And then, quietly, the conditions arrived. Exclusive training. Private sessions. A schedule that belonged to the family, not to Bruce. A relocation, perhaps. A separation from his own projects. And an unspoken expectation that Bruce would behave like an employee. A very expensive employee. Almost no one noticed what that kind of offer does to a man like Bruce Lee. It doesn't tempt him. It insults him. Because Bruce, for all his ambition, didn't see knowledge as a luxury product. He saw it as something earned. Something bled for. Something that loses its meaning when it's handed to someone just because their father can afford a mountain of gold. Later accounts suggest Bruce didn't respond with drama. No shouting. No theatrical refusal. He listened. He let the offer finish. He let the air settle. And then he asked questions that powerful men hate. Not questions that beg. Questions that measure. Who is the son? What does he train? Why does he want this? What does he think training means? Because the wealthy often imagine training is a service. Bruce understood training is an encounter. It changes the student, yes. But it also demands truth from the teacher. You don't sell truth by the kilogram. So Bruce refused. Or at least, he refused the terms. And in these retellings, it's right there inside the refusal that the story turns. Because rejection is not neutral in a room built on entitlement. When a prince offers you gold and you say no, you don't just refuse money. You refuse power. You refuse status. You refuse the fantasy that the world can be purchased. And that kind of refusal creates a problem that must be solved. So the offer shifts. The gold stays on the table, at least metaphorically. But the tone changes. Admiration becomes challenge. Respect becomes irritation. And suddenly, the conversation isn't about training anymore. It's about proof. Because if Bruce Lee won't be bought, then maybe Bruce Lee can be broken. According to those present, someone in the room, maybe the prince's champion, maybe a handler protecting the prince's pride, made a quiet suggestion. A test. Not a public fight. A private demonstration. A just to see. The kind of phrase that pretends not to be threatening while carrying teeth. The champion in these accounts is never described like a cartoon villain. He's described like a professional. A man trained to be an extension of the house's authority. The kind of champion who doesn't laugh. He evaluates. He stands with the confidence of someone who has ended arguments with his hands. And he has one role in that room. To ensure the prince never feels embarrassed. But the presence of a champion has another effect too. It raises the temperature. Because now Bruce is not negotiating with words. He's negotiating with bodies. And bodies don't care about gold. Bodies care about distance. Timing. Balance. Breath. What happened next, if you believe the better versions, wasn't a sudden brawl. It was a slow tightening. People moving furniture without saying that's what they're doing. A space cleared. A carpet edge lifted slightly. A pair of shoes removed. A guard or attendant stepping backward to widen the circle. And that circle matters. Because a circle is how rooms decide they want violence without saying the word. Bruce didn't posture. He didn't put on a performance. He did what he always did. He lowered his center. Not dramatically. Just enough that his feet became quiet. He kept his shoulders loose, not squared up like a tournament fighter. He held his hands in a way that looked casual to untrained eyes, but it wasn't casual. It was ready. According to later accounts, the champion began the way strong men often begin when they want to intimidate a smaller man. He closed distance. Not with speed. With weight. A slow step forward, trying to make Bruce give ground. Because in the psychology of a champion, making the other man step back is a win before the fight begins. The room watched for that step back. That was the real test. Not punches. Not kicks. The first retreat. But Bruce didn't retreat. He shifted. Angle. A slight pivot that moved him off the line without moving him away. A correction so small it looked like nothing. And that's when the champion paused, just for a fraction. Because his body expected resistance. It didn't expect disappearance. But that wasn't what unsettled the witnesses. What unsettled them was Bruce's face. No anger. No panic. No performance. Just attention. Like a man reading a book. The champion tried again. A quicker step. A hand flick, maybe a probing strike, something designed to touch Bruce and establish dominance. And this is where the confrontation becomes precise. Because Bruce didn't block like a traditional martial artist. He intercepted. A short movement, wrist and forearm aligning like a door shutting. Not hard. Not violent looking. But it interrupted the champion's rhythm. And then Bruce touched him. Not a showy punch. A compact shot that traveled almost no distance. The kind of strike that lands before the brain registers that a strike was thrown. The sound, witnesses say in some versions, was small. More like fabric snapping than bones cracking. The champion's reaction was the loud part. A blink that came too late. A chest tightening. A foot stepping wrong. Because once your timing is broken, your feet betray you. The champion recovered, because champions do. He tried to pressure forward, using size and authority. And Bruce did the most humiliating thing you can do to a powerful man. He made him miss without moving far. Just a shoulder turn. Just a half step. The champion's momentum carried into empty air. And in that empty air, Bruce placed another touch. Not to injure. To educate. To show the room that the champion's power was aimed at a target that was no longer there. Now the champion was forced to fight differently. Not like a house enforcer. Like a man in danger of embarrassment. And embarrassment makes people reckless. What happened next was not a flurry for show. It was a controlled burst, short and clinical. Bruce's hands moved in a way that looked almost too small for the effect it produced. A tap that disrupted balance. A straight shot to the body line. A quick touch to the guard. Everything placed where it stole options. In these accounts, the champion's attacks get heavier, more committed, because he wants a decisive moment. But decisive moments are exactly what Bruce refuses to give you. He doesn't trade. He doesn't meet force with force. He slips. He angles. He interrupts. And the room begins to understand something about him that money cannot purchase. Bruce Lee doesn't fight your strength. He fights your plan. And once your plan collapses, your strength has nowhere to land. According to those present, there is a moment where the champion stops. Not because he's knocked out. Because he's solved. He realizes the price of continuing is higher than the reward. If he continues and loses visibly, the prince loses face. If he escalates and injures Bruce, the house gains a different kind of scandal. So he stops. And in that stop, the entire room exhales. Not relief. Recognition. Because the real battle wasn't the exchange of strikes. It was the exchange of power. The prince offered gold to buy Bruce's obedience. Bruce refused, and then he refused again with his body. He proved he could not be forced gently. And he could not be forced violently without cost. That is the worst outcome for an entitled room. A man who cannot be purchased and cannot be pushed. Afterward, later accounts suggest the conversation returned to the offer, but it was no longer confident. It was cautious. The gold still existed in the air, heavy and tempting. But now it carried a new meaning. It wasn't a reward. It was compensation for risk. Because taking Bruce would mean controlling him. And controlling him would mean confronting him every day. Some versions claim Bruce's refusal included a line about character, about training being earned, about not selling knowledge like jewelry. Whether the exact words are true doesn't matter as much as the shape of the refusal. Because the refusal wasn't arrogant. It was principled. And principles are frightening in rooms that expect compliance. In the weeks after, the story supposedly traveled the way forbidden stories travel. Not publicly. Privately. A driver tells someone. An assistant whispers to another assistant. A bodyguard repeats it in a different city. And because it's barely documented, it becomes myth-ready. But the skepticism remains. Did it happen exactly like this? Was it truly a prince? Was it truly gold measured in kilograms? Was it a different wealthy patron later rewritten as royalty? Was the champion real, or a composite of several tests Bruce faced as his fame expanded? Those questions are healthy. They keep the story grounded. And yet, the reason the story survives is that it contains something emotionally true about Bruce Lee. He was ambitious, yes. But he wasn't for sale in the way powerful men wanted. He wanted respect, not ownership. He wanted mastery, not luxury. He wanted to build a world where a student earns the lesson with sweat, not with inherited wealth. So when people ask why Bruce would turn down a mountain of gold, the simplest answer is also the most human one. Because if he said yes, he wouldn't be Bruce Lee anymore. He'd be a product. A possession. A living trophy. And Bruce understood what trophies really are. They are objects that don't move. They are things that sit still so someone else can feel large. Bruce was never built to sit still. That's the quiet legacy of the story. Not the gold. Not the prince. Not even the champion. The legacy is that Bruce Lee's real power wasn't in how hard he could hit. It was in what he wouldn't accept. And in 1972, in a room where wealth was supposed to be the final argument, his refusal became the loudest sound. Not shouted. Not performed. Just placed there like a truth. Heavy. Unmovable. Like gold. Only this time, it wasn't for sale. It was a boundary. And the room, according to those present, learned to respect it. This is that story.